Ever since I took my first art history class back in college, I've been obsessed with the use of symbolism, motifs, and visual storytelling in art. An example of this is memento mori, Latin for the phrase, remember that you will die. This is a symbolic trope in art that acts as a reminder of death within the artwork. A common motif that represents this trope is a skull or bones, a coffin, or even just an hourglass, indicating the passage of time. By placing one of these symbols in an artwork, a piece of the story about what's going on in the image is being communicated to you, the viewer. When you know how to look for these storytelling symbols, historical works of art can be transformed from static images into moving stories that unfold themselves as you notice more details. A particularly interesting use of symbolism in art is to convey the personality or story of a person and their identity. My name is Bia. I'm the artist of Tinkalila Arts. In this video, we're going to examine how artists express identity through symbolism in art and how you can train your mind to search for these symbols and recognize them. So you will be looking like the smartest person in the art gallery when you're able to extrapolate the whole story behind a work of art. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Let's get started. What is identity? To know when a story is being told about a person's identity, we have to be able to recognize concepts of identity when we see them. A helpful way to think about this is to consider what the aspects are of your identity. These may include culture, gender, race, sexuality, hobbies, career, personality, and more. Some of these elements may be more central to one person's identity than another's. When you look at a work of art, search for symbols of these elements of identity. Let's analyze this painting by Austrian-Swiss painter Angelica Kaufman. What do you see? There are three figures and they seem to be in conversation with each other, maybe even confrontation, as they look at each other expectantly, as if they are trying to convince one another of something. The two figures on either side are holding something in their hands. On the left, this figure holds sheet music, and on the right, the other figure holds a painter's palette. What do you think is going on in this picture? The self-explanatory title of this painting is Self-Portrait of the Artist Hesitating Between Music and Painting. This piece was painted by Kaufman in 1794 as a representation of her making a career choice between music and painting. All three of these figures are Angelica Kaufman, as she imagines herself in these different careers. The white dress of the central figure signals her purity, as she hasn't chosen either yet, making her unmarried to a career. During this time, music was a more common career for women, and painting was unconventional. You can see how the musician Angelica begs white dress Angelica to be reasonable and choose something that she is fond of but is safe. Notice that she is sitting, complacent. In contrast, painter Angelica practically screams for her to take the road less traveled by. She is standing in an action pose, pointing confidently to the mountains in the distance, demonstrating the difficult journey that she would have as a woman artist. And we know which one she picks, not just evidenced by the fact that this is a painting and not a song, but also by the hopeless darkness on the left side of the image. A building structure grounds the left of this painting, showing stability bathed in this dark hue. But on the painter's side, golden light floods an expansive landscape. In art, Angelica sees freedom. The artist created this painting after the fact of her decision, portraying this narrative of her life. So now you know what to look for. Take in the entire image, the foreground, the background, the characters, the objects, the colors. Let's try it again with these next images, and feel free to pause the video to examine these closely. This is a painting by Frida Kahlo. What do you see? There are two figures, again appearing identical like Kaufman's painting. How are the two figures we see now similar to each other or different from each other? Why do you think each of these figures might be dressed the way they are? This painting from 1939 is titled The Two Fridas. The dresses of the two Fridas are important. One side displays her father's German-Jewish descent, and the other shows her mother's Mexican roots. The white dress is a classic Victorian wedding gown which covers her body, giving the impression of conservatism and purity. On the right side, representing her Mexican heritage, we see a more colorful and less restrictive dress. Then we see the connected hearts and the scissor that the Frida on the left holds. This may pertain to her tumultuous relationship with her husband, Diego Rivera. Frida has a desire to be seen as a notable artist in her own right and not be overshadowed by her artist husband. At the time of the creation of this painting, she was going through a divorce with Diego Rivera. In this painting, she holds hands with herself. She is her own comfort in this difficult time. This work has multiple possible meanings. It was painted in the moment of Kahlo's crisis, resulting in a messier collection of symbols when compared to Kaufman's self-portrait, a polished recollection of the events of her life, portraying herself as the ambitious hero of her story. Kahlo is perhaps more honest than this. What we can take from this multi-layered depiction is that she is showing us two sides of herself that are very different from each other. One side that is in pain and bleeding out, and the other side that appears to be strong and grounded, rooted in her heritage and her marriage. Frida tells us that she's a multifaceted person that's struggling and experiencing conflicting emotions and holding conflicting ideas at the same time. The expression of identity here is muddled, and that's kind of the point. Let's look at another artwork. We see two young men pictured in what looks like a home. They're posed comfortably, and they lean in towards each other, showing familiarity with one another. One holds a saxophone. It seems like he must play this instrument. In the corner, there are photos hanging on the wall. This is an oil painting by Castillo, a contemporary artist. A common theme in her work is her portrayal of Black men. When asked why she often chooses them as her subjects, she says, "I see the humanity, and in turn, I want audiences to engage with them as fathers, sons, brothers, cousins, as individuals with their own unique stories to share." In a different quote, she states, "Home tends to be where we are our most vulnerable and intimate selves. The domestic space directly correlates with comfort, and as a result, it feels significant to have each of my subjects surrounded by their own personal belongings. Their environment acts as support for the story of that individual which I am trying to tell." All of these symbols, the saxophone, the photos on the wall, are there to contribute to the idea that Castillo is expressing, that she wants her audience to see her subjects in a familiar light, in their identities as fathers, sons, brothers, and cousins. Here's the last artwork we're going to look at. The image is only in two colors, a dark blue and the white of the page. We see a boy in what looks like portrait framing, except the background behind him stretches out in both directions. This background is a long lineup of various buildings, storefronts, and other figures. When we zoom in, we can see these figures include Korean lettering, a McDonald's, a pine tree which might be a Christmas tree, the Statue of Liberty, a church, and more. And the boy in front stands in front of it all, looking away in the other direction, not towards us, but not towards the background either. This is a self-portrait that Dadu Shin created with a ballpoint pen on paper in 2020 for a New York Times article on Asian American artists. These artists were asked to create self-portraits that celebrated their culture and identity. When asked about this piece, he says, "As an Asian American, I was constantly attempting to assimilate into communities that would inevitably exclude me. Amongst my white American peers, I would always be a representation of a different culture. To my peers in Korea, I was a foreigner who just happened to look like them. I was a foreigner to them, and they were foreigners to me." Shin turns the New York Times prompt on its head. Through the mishmash of American and Korean cultural symbols we see in the background, which he dejectedly looks away from, he shows us his reality of being Asian American, a term often used in the name of representation that conveys little of the real national and cultural differences that have led to his feelings of exclusion. This very honest expression of not only his identity, but his feelings toward the very concept of identity is enabled by the myriad symbolism spanning the width of the artwork. Many times, I have heard that visual art is, by nature, consumed too quickly because it does not unfold itself over time in the way that music or dance does. But this isn't true. You just need to teach yourself to look closer. In the details, there is often hidden a story about a character, not unlike a novel or a poem. And when you know how to look at what's quietly hiding in plain sight, you'll start to see the whole picture. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments, what are some bits of symbolism in the artworks that we looked at that I might have missed in creating this video? And what are your favorite artworks with rich symbolism? You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Tinkalila. See you next time. Bye. If you like learning about art concepts, check out this video next where I teach you color theory in just 5 minutes.